Hi guys, it's me again. I know I usually upload like every 1 to 2 weeks, but I spontaneously started a project that is taking me way longer than I expected it to, and my drawing program keeps crashing while I try to finish it. So yeah, it's been like 4 weeks at this point, sorry about that. Anyways, hopefully this video is good enough to make up for my absence, so please enjoy. Okay, so like, not to brag or anything, but 2 whole people have told me that they like my persona design, so I think that's enough credentials for me to give some tips on how you can make one for yourself. Unfortunately, I'm not a pro, but I am someone who passionately draws as a hobby, so hopefully some of these tips can be helpful to you if you've been wanting to make one for yourself. To start off, I want to point out some certain recognizable personas. Despite their variety, what do all of these have in common? It's their clear aesthetics, of course. A lot of artists lean into the vibe or aesthetic that they tend to draw. Like if you enjoy fashion from the 2000s, or maybe aliens inspire you a lot, that may be the central part of your persona's design. That brings me to my first tip, which is to find a style or specific thing that you really resonate with. This can be a great foundation to start, and some good questions you can ask yourself when at this stage can be, what do you tend to draw a lot? What vibe or aesthetic do you enjoy the most? Do you have any persisting obsessions? This stage is scarcely confined by anything. You can have a Pinterest board, of course, but I encourage you to explore things outside of that, like random objects, songs, shows, whatever brings you the most comfort and joy. Next is something I know a lot of people, myself included, do when designing a persona, which is basing it off of an existing avatar that you have. There are a ton of games, tools, and services where you can create an avatar of yourself, and if you have one already, it can be a great starting point. If not, Pick Crew and even Gacha Life, I've heard, have a ton of options if you're unsure where to start. Doing this can help you get a better feel for the styles, colors, and whatever that you lean towards the most when representing yourself. I had this Roblox avatar when I was designing my persona, and I loved the open ribcage idea, so I decided to incorporate that into my design. Another thing that you can do to personalize your persona is to include nods to yourself, which might sound a little confusing, but let me explain. What I mean by this is you can include features like obviously your hair color or eye color in your persona design, but there are more unique things that are specific to yourself, such as like moles. I've seen someone with like dots in their eyes, and even teeth. Before I got braces, I had this weird sideways tooth that kind of looked like a fang, and people in my class would always like look at it, and one time actually in the lunch line, this kid was like telling his friend about it, and I was just standing behind him, like not knowing what to do. So I just like awkwardly stood there listening to him talk about me until I got my lunch. But that's all just a long way to say that my tooth was a very distinct feature about myself. So even though I don't have it anymore, I included it into my persona design. And keep in mind that this tip doesn't have to be followed like an absolute rule. I know a lot of people like changing their character's species or hair color, and that's totally cool too. Whatever floats your boat, man. But I do totally recommend making sure that you resonate with the features that you include in your persona. A mistake I made when making Cryo's original design was a small detail, but I made her belly button more vertical than my actual one, and this really bothered me for some reason. Maybe it's because it's something I'm insecure about, which is so stupid by the way, but I am a victim to beauty standards as well. But it felt wrong, and it made me not resonate with her as much. I'm not saying that you have to make your persona an exact replica of yourself, but sometimes I feel like it's better to embrace your insecurities and flaws, because they're part of who you are, and including them can help you appreciate yourself more as you are. Or you could make your persona just like a completely juiced up version of yourself. Like, there's seriously no rules, you don't have to follow this at all. Something else I wanted to mention is the amount of detail in your persona. I feel like this heavily depends on your art style, but if adding an excessive amount of accessories to your character is something you enjoy, okay, do that. But if you lean towards a more simplistic style, you do that too. I will say though that depending on what you're using your persona for, the amount of detail in the design can vary. My persona's rough sheet has a ton of details and stylistic choices that I exempt when making my sprites for YouTube. Here she's taller and has a more detailed face, but here she's more chibi and has less face details. This kinda brings me to my next point, which is that your persona's design is by no means set in stone. As people, we're all constantly changing. I know for a fact that my personal style has changed drastically since I was younger, which is just natural. It's something that just happens, so don't feel confined by the longevity of the design. It simply just doesn't matter. For content creation, of course, it's important to be recognizable, but if you get to a point where you don't enjoy the design anymore, no one is holding you back from changing it, other than yourself, of course. You can always go back and completely change your persona if need be, so go crazy for the now. Alrighty, that was a lot of information, so here's a quick rundown of all the tips I covered. First one was to brainstorm a specific aesthetic or detail. Next one was to base your persona off of an avatar. Third was to include nods to yourself. Fourth is add details according to your style/purpose. And fifth is that personas aren't set in stone. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, guys. I apologize if I sounded absolutely congested during this voiceover. It's 100% because I am. Allergy season has been kicking my ass this year. But yeah. Anyways, all of the artists mentioned in this video will be linked in the description in order, so check them out. Though I'm sure you've heard of them all already, so. Hopefully some of this info was helpful and you feel inspired to make a persona for yourself. So, thank you, and see you in the next one.